All right, so congressional districts. So after the first census in 1790, each state was allotted one House seat for every 33,000 inhabitants, for a total of 105 seats. Total membership was finally fixed at its current ceiling of 435 members in the House back in 1911, when House leaders concluded that further growth would impede the House's work, right? Thinking that we're trying to make something happen amongst this many people. Any additional people is really going to make this too hard to handle. So that means that the average House member now represents approximately 700,000 constituents. That's a lot of constituents, right? And the size of each state's delegation may change after the census as state and region population shifts, which is also just highlighting why the census is so important, right? Because of some of the effects are this, the effects are on congressional districts, the effects are on representation, the effects are on the electoral college. So the effects are quite weighted. Now, there's this term I'm sure many of you have heard of, or maybe not everybody's heard of it, but many, at least within the U.S., have probably heard the term gerrymandering, even if it's just kind of here and there, even if it's not very clear, you've probably heard of it just 'cause it's a interesting word, right? So whether or not you understand it, I imagine many of you, if you grew up within the United States, you've probably heard the term. And so some thoughts for you, because I've got some videos. I won't play them here together, but I will link them below in the YouTube video. And I want you to think about the following questions. First, I want you to define gerrymandering. And then ask yourself, is it fair? Right? And, well, I kind of have it right here. I asked you about redistricting, right? If Congress is based on districts, right, like we saw in the last slide, when we think about gerrymandering and the way it has an effect on districting. So are there better ways to redistrict? Are there fairer ways to redistrict? Could there realistically be a more objective method of choosing districts? And what, if anything, should be done about gerrymandering? When we think about the politics of redistricting, we will first think about reapportionment, an idea that I have highlighted to you in an earlier video. And reapportionment is allocation of congressional seats among the states every 10 years, right, following the census, right? So the number of seats per state, it's dependent on the census, okay? And redistricting, right? That's the process of redrawing of a district's lines in states with more than one representative. Okay, so really you can envision looking at a map of an area, right, and seeing existing districts or seeing districts overlaid over cities or over across states. Imagine redistricting. If there's an existing district, then to redistrict is to change that into another district. And there's different kinds of doing that, different ways of doing that, rather. So, to define the term, gerrymandering is redistricting to benefit a particular group. And of course, well, not of course, but there are different kinds of gerrymandering, and it's touched on in the reading. Pro-incumbent gerrymandering, partisan gerrymandering, right? Partisan meaning along party lines, and racial gerrymandering, right? To think about districts, and our districts created that are majority minority districts. How, thinking through things about how do you get representation in minority communities and so on. So really this question of gerrymandering has a lot of different facets and parts to think about. Gosh, when you're thinking about all of this stuff, it's like, well, why do people run for Congress? When you think about some of the things one has to do to run, the fundraising that has to take place, the money that needs to be raised, the handshaking and holding of babies, and all of the labor that goes into running for Congress. Okay, so why would anyone want this job? Well, for a lot of folks, for many people, not everyone, there's a sense of duty. a desire to create policy, change legislation. One might go based on their ideology or ideology of a party, right? Maybe they're motivated to participate, that it pays well, it's a good job, that there's perks associated with the position, that there's power associated with the position, right? Those are nothing to laugh at or sneeze at, rather, this idea of access to power and resources and so forth. And that there's a downside we could consider, right? Whether it's the hard work, there's low job security, right? And we know that because there's elections every 2 or 6 years, right? That you've got a job for a certain period of time. It's expensive, right? A lot of people are going to Congress from somewhere else across the country. So that might mean maintaining multiple homes, right? Multiple places of residence in Washington, D.C. and wherever folks are from. Though, of course, I've got a link here to a CBS report of sleeping in their offices about the representatives who use their office in D.C. as the place where they would sleep, crash, spend the night, and trying to budget and maintain, thought towards resources. So, I guess a lot to think about when it comes to what it would take to be a United States congressperson. All right, so beyond that, let's consider what Congress has looked like and some of the changes made to Congress over time. So we might consider ethnicity in an unrepresentative Congress. So the current U.S. Congress is the most diverse ever, but minority ethnic groups are still underrepresented compared to the U.S. population. So we see in the 115th Congress, that was the Congress from 2017 to 19 class, and we're able to see this by political party. So we see in blue, the blue squares, the Democratic Party, the red squares are the Republican Party, and we see here broken down by race, by white and non-white here. So we're seeing here the most recent, the Congress 2017 to 2019. Well, take a moment. What do you see? Okay, hopefully you're seeing what I'm seeing in terms of the larger the square highlights the bigger the group, right? So the larger the square here up top of white people in the Democratic Party, the larger square is 149, and we see to the Republican Party is 276. Okay, we see non-white members in blue at 91 and the Republican Party at 16. Now this scale goes back to 1967, not every year here, but we see from 2017 up at the top left down to 1967 down below. And it seems that what we're seeing over time is that, what are we seeing over time? We're seeing more non-white members in the Democratic Party starting in 1967 here, and we see it steadily growing over time. We see it also growing in the Republican Party as well, the number of non-white members, although it's at a much, we're only starting to see something really starting in 1993 here. If there's something in 1977. Again in 1993, 95, 97, right, we're seeing small groups of non-white members of the party, right? So this is just instructive on what is the makeup, or what has been the makeup, what is the makeup of Congress as it relates to race and gender and job and class, right? And so we're just going to highlight some of these here. How diverse is it in Congress? So we see that the 117th Congress by race and ethnicity. right? And we're seeing this by political party, and it's also split up by members in the House of Representatives at the very top and members of the Senate here at the bottom. Let's see if I can move myself out the way. What do we see here? Well, I mean, hopefully you're seeing what I'm seeing here. It's trying to give us a breakdown in terms of race and ethnicity here, and are seeing more non-white, right, African American, Hispanic, American Indian, Asian Pacific Islander here in the Democratic Party. We're seeing some representation here in the Republican Party, some members of the House as well, and then we're seeing that reflected in the Senate count below in terms of Republican senators and Democratic senators. Okay. All right, let's come back to this question of representation.